Pokemon has been a big part of my life ever since I can remember. I used to listen to my brother tell me all about Pokemon Crystal as a toddler. Then when I got older, we would join forces and play through the pairs of GBA games together. I would get Leaf Green, he would get Fire Red, he would get Ruby, I would get Sapphire. It would be our mission to max out his Pokedex because, truth be told, I didn't care. I just wanted to spend time with my brother, and as we know, when he went to college and I was still in high school, I fell off of Pokemon. But my cousins who were very close to us didn't. They kept playing and got really into ROM hacks. For the uninitiated, a ROM hack is the process of modifying a ROM image or ROM file of a video game to alter the game's graphics, dialogue, levels, gameplay, and or other elements. This is usually done by technically inclined video game fans to breathe new life into cherished old games as a creative outlet or to make essentially new unofficial games using the old game's engine. ROM hacking isn't just limited to Pokemon games either. If you remember last year's Speedy Gonzales video, that game has a rather famous ROM hack called Sonic the Hedgehog 4. It just replaced Speedy's sprite with Sonic's from Sonic 2 and the mice are replaced with Mario's. But I digress. Would you believe that the earliest of Pokemon ROM hacks date back all the way to the late 1990s, with modified editions of Pokemon Red? More often than not, they were just small changes to sprites or dialogue changes and would generally keep the original game intact. And moreover, these early ROM hacks were infamous for being particularly crude in nature, generally doing stupid stuff and replacing the dialogue with obscene text. Pokemon ROM hacking has come a long way since then though, with great titles like Pokemon Glazed, Pokemon Liquid Crystal, Pokemon Ash Gray, Pokemon Mega Power, Pokemon Pokemon Snakewood, a ROM made using Pokemon Generation 3, Ruby specifically, created almost entirely by one person who goes by the name Cutlerine. Or at least they used to. Cutlerine has been mostly absent from the online Pokemon hacking scene since 2014. Snakewood in particular has gained notoriety and infamy for being many things, mainly a complete f***ing mess. While Cutlerine has gone offline, the hack is still technically incomplete. They claim that the hack made it to 98.2% completion, but even with this number, it's possible to see the end of the game. It can be beaten. My origins with it began on a stormy night where my cousins and I were looking around for Pokemon hacks to try out because we were bored. We played through it, and the first thing we noticed, of course, was how insane it was. The main gimmick is that of the zombiemon, or zombie Pokemon. We made it to a cave where an extremely overleveled Pokemon awaited us, and we didn't feel like going any further. But I've never forgotten about it, and I thought it would be an interesting little project to take on for this year's Halloween episode. As many of you already know, I'm not much of an RPG man. I actually just finished my first RPG in about 15 years a couple months ago, so this will be a good chance for me to stretch my legs one more time, so to speak. There are some ground rules though. I remember that overleveled Pokemon encounter very well, and if I had to guess, that's not the only time something like that will happen. So about a week before I started my journey, I sent my cousin Jake ahead of me to quote-unquote scout the game for me. And he sent me back some great information. This playthrough would not have been possible if these text messages hadn't been exchanged. Secondly, the second half of the game is very difficult and stupid. Thus, I looked up a very helpful screenshot let's play by someone named Cheshire on tapatalk.com. I didn't even know those were a thing, but I'm grateful nevertheless. And I will link this thread in the description. Basically, what I'm saying is I have no shame in revealing that I got some assistance for this playthrough. And as you'll soon come to find out, I needed all the help I could get. And as a fair warning, as if you couldn't already tell, this is a beefy one. If you don't want to listen to the totally bonkers plot summary, feel free to use the chapter selection feature I've left in the description, but don't blame me when you're missing a lot of context later on. So without further ado, I'm going to take you on my captivatingly bizarre adventure through Pokemon Snakewood. Our story begins as a voice faintly begins to speak out, claiming to not remember anything or even who he is. The memory returns that this is a young boy and that his name is, well, obviously at this point you get to choose your character's name, but I want to bring attention to the choices really quick. Wraith. shade, dark. And I? Yeah, this'll be fun. Now, for the sake of clarity and consistency, I'll just be referring to this character as Ross. The dizzy boy regains consciousness in what seems to be the remains of his home in Little Root Town. After searching, he comes across 3 Pokeballs and takes one of them, which happens to contain a Baltoy. Just outside Little Root, a cry for help can be heard as a man is being attacked by something. Ross steps in to find that it's a zombie, and it's Bulbasaur. After a short battle, the zombie crumbles to dust. Professor Birch then recognizes and thanks Ross immediately. Unfortunately, amnesia has gotten the better of Ross, and he can't remember a thing. The professor explains that they both lived in that town 3 years ago with Ross's older brother Landon, the champion of the Pokemon League and protagonist of Ruby's story, as well as Birch's daughter May, Landon's girlfriend. And after more oohs are exchanged, Birch takes them both to the next town over, Oldale Town. Ross comes to in a Pokemon Center and finds Birch just a little ways away. He exclaims that he found an egg in the wild and proceeds to give it to the reluctant boy. After vocalizing the concerns of taking an egg away from its parents, Birch replies with, "Well, I don't see any parents, do you?" Thus, the kidnapped egg joins the adventure. The nutty professor then tasks Ross with finding Landon and May. The two set out to find the cause of the zombie infection weeks ago and haven't returned. Reluctantly, Ross agrees and is given instruction to head west to Petalburg City. Just as he's leaving Oldale Town, this so-called Death Caller tries to stop him with a battle, but she's unsuccessful and leaves. But not before revealing her name to be Alicia. After beating some zombies back, catching a C-Dot, finding some oddly descriptive corpses, seriously, what the hell, we come to the first roadblock of many. This zombie corpse in Petalburg Woods. While Baltoy and C-Dot aren't exactly great, they aren't downright terrible, but they don't stand a chance against this zombie Houndour and Murkrow. Enter this game's worst aspect. Horrible imbalance. This is merely the first of many occasions where the enemies will be on a far higher level than your current Pokemon. It's the main reason I don't feel the least bit guilty using an emulator to play this, because grinding is such a necessary part of the adventure. Doing all this at normal speed would be like pulling teeth, especially with Gen 3's notoriously slow battle animations. So what ended up happening is I went and grinded my ass off, still lost, then coincidentally found a Pikachu in the woods, so I caught it and grinded it up to my level and made it past the stupid zombie lady. Anyway, back with our protagonist. The floating corpse warns him that even greater demons await in Rustboro Town before crumbling to dust and leaving behind the stone badge. As Ross picks it up, he begins to have a flashback of his brother Landon, but it's entirely unimportant, so let's move on. And on the way out of the forest, C-Dot evolved into Nuzleaf. Yay! Shortly after arriving in the city, Ross bumps into Alicia, who's surprised to see he survived the demon she left behind. After another failed battle, the Death Caller announces her allegiance to the so-called Lord Gravitrick and runs away. Ross attempts to follow her, but is stopped by the hatching of the egg that Birch gave us into an egg. Okay, moving on. After strolling up through town, Ross observes an odd exchange between a mysterious man and a zombie named Dandelion. The corpse complains that it chose a particularly slow host on account of the legs being missing. The man states that they both need to be in tip-top shape when they face them. After hearing them confidently mention their invisibility, Ross approaches. Shocked, the strange man asks what he's doing here, as if to have known the boy previously. After explaining the whole amnesia thing again, the man apologizes for having mistaken him for someone else. After introducing himself as Gleese, he and Dandelion set off to the spot where the demons are coming from, with Ross volunteering himself. In a nearby cave, Gleese begins an exorcism as Ross beats back demons as they attempt to escape hell through this poor girl. And for some reason, Ross has a flashback of his brother and May going shopping in Slateport, but again, it's fairly unimportant. After finishing the ceremony, Gleese thanks the young trainer and departs. As he emerges from the cave to a destroyed Verdanturf city, Ross is stricken with a flashback of someone named Pestilence. He then passes out and falls down the cliffs, coming to right next to Alicia and another unknown girl. Conveniently, this is Pestilence, the only female member of the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
It's about to get all stupid up in here!
Apparently, this girl is the one who attempted to kill Ross, but she only managed to knock out some of his memories. After challenging him to a battle and losing, she and an apologetic Alicia then run off to build a better base of operations. Now, as you do, I check these areas before moving on, and above the town I find the Endless Plains. Don't ask, doesn't have an answer. But in these endless plains is HM01 Cut, which calls for a new loving member to be added to my family. There we go. Perfect. I hate HMs. Upon exiting the cave, the phone rings, and it's Professor Birch. He claims that he got an old military satellite working and set up a connection with Dewford Town, and Ross will want to check it out because Landon and May were recently seen there. The catch? Dewford is across a stretch of ocean, and no one knows where the HM for surf or a balance badge would even be. He points Ross in the direction of the badge, but the HM is a mystery for now. Just up the road, the young hero pillages a dead body to luckily find a Pokeball. Ross takes it because no one is looking and sees that it's a Magikarp. But he's holding an item. It's HM03 Surf? We still need the balance badge, but these trainers need to be taken care of at some point.
Well, okay then.
I guess you gotta take the shortcuts as they come. With everything he needs in hand, Ross makes the trip across the sea to Dewford. After arriving, he makes a beeline for the gym leader, Haruko. But the troubled leader denies the request for a battle and instead begs the hero to investigate a disturbance in the nearby solar caves. After a short trek through the caverns, he encounters Meteor the Dragon King, ally to the Four Horsemen. Yes, it's just a Charizard sprite recolor, don't think about it. The Dragon King then recognizes Ross and asks why Pestilence didn't take care of him. After another failed attempt to kill him, Meteor retreats, and in a twisted bit of irony, Ross exclaims that this is all so confusing. Back at the gym, he explains to Haruko that there's a group of dragons who came here with the zombies. This means that her suspicions were confirmed, and she'll go get the anti-air gun ready. Oh my god. They fight, Ross loses a bunch because the Pokemon are too strong, then grinds up a Makuhita, wins, never to use the Makuhita again. This game is great, moving on. Outside the gym, Ross gets another plot-convenient phone call from Professor Birch, who tells Ross to stop wasting time slaying dragons and find their missing people. So after finding the right townsperson to speak with, this unassuming child by the way, he reveals that Landon and May were seen near the desert recently, so off we go. While making it through an overrun Slateport City, Ross ends up falling in the water and trudging through this abandoned submarine? After meeting up with the vessel's second-in-command Usher, he asks for some assistance to get the engine back up and running so they can both escape. So Ross does what any rational person would do. Hit the engine with a big metal stick. Thankfully, it works, and Usher drops our makeshift mechanic off just above Slateport City. After some exploring in the wrong direction, Ross finds himself back in Petalburg City, and the metal stick he was just given is just what he needed to get into this gym. Inside, he finds... Oh no! Back on track now in Malvile City, Ross runs into Gleese. He accompanies us to a battle happening just to the left. These pink hair guys, known as the Inquisition, are fighting back demon chefs that were attacking Slateport. The Inquisition is part of the Hoenn government, and seeing as how the zombies have eaten every other branch, it's safe to say that they are the Hoenn government. The grunts seem to be struggling before this woman comes down and makes short work of the chefs. Gleese immediately identifies her as the powerful Taoist Chloe, seeing as how Gleese is a Taoist himself. Taoism is actually a real-life Chinese religion whose goals are to live in harmony with the Tao, which can be interpreted as path or road. But here, Taoists are powerful wizards that can control zombies and demonic creatures. Ross then brings up the obvious question, why are you hiding from one of your own? He reveals that Chloe has defeated and taken control of the Inquisition, as well as leading a hunt for Gleese's capture, blaming him for the entire zombie outbreak. Ross shakes off those ridiculous notions and follows Gleese's new instructions, which was to meet up with Dandelion at the entrance to this underground civilization and solve a rousing game of Clue, where the Malvile City gym leader, Watson, was murdering people, where the only notable thing that happened was evolving Pikachu into Raichu. After that fairly meaningless side quest, Ross stops in on Watson's old gym to overhear an Inquisition member say that they've captured Gleese. After finding the Inquisition's base and battling his way through, Mystery Egg starts evolving into... Secret Egg? I don't know what I expected, honestly. And this is where we're introduced to the Inquisition's elite task force, the Deadly Seven. They're a group of Afro-loving, nonsense-spouting trainers, and get used to them because they show up a lot. Their leader, Asimov, is said to be the most powerful of them all, but anger-induced grinding always wins in the end. Impressed after his defeat, he tells the boy where to find Gleese. After a lot of bullshit, and I mean a lot of bullshit, Ross finally finds the Taoist surrounded by orange drink. And no, that's not even a joke, you should have expected that by now. And just for good measure, Gleese instructs Ross to go get his stuff back from a scientist so he can teleport them away. Except after he gets everything, Gleese wants to terrorize the Inquisition a little bit, so he sends Ross on his way alone. With nothing but an online walkthrough to go by, Ross heads north for the desert, coincidentally stumbling across Alicia from earlier and Famine, another one of the horsemen. He greets our hero and confirms that he must be the one who defeated his sister Pestilence in the west and set their demon invasion back so much. Even though it didn't seem like Pestilence was all that defeated or upset, she just said they were going to find a new base, but alright, whatever, she was defeated. After Alicia loses another battle, they depart, but not before Famine reveals that they have Landon and May in captivity. After like 2 steps, Professor Birch calls to point the confused boy in the direction of the monks atop the mountain monastery and Sage Kanzaki. Up on the monastery, the monks ask Ross to prove himself by going back down to the desert to destroy a monster, literally where he just was, in fact. Turns out the monster is a shiny Aerodactyl, which was easily caught. Back at the monastery, the monks tell him that there is still darkness on the mountain and task him to snuff it out. And oh great, the Inquisition and Deadly Seven are here spouting their gibberish. At the peak, Chloe has backed Famine into a corner, but startled by the sight of Ross, Famine shoves Chloe aside and promises to battle him another day. Chloe asks Ross if he was the same kid that was running around with Gleese, to which he responds with the most goo goo gaga baby shit answer ever, "Yeah, because we're the good guys and you're all the bad guys." Surprised by the remark, Chloe enlightens him that Gleese is no good guy. He might be fighting the 4 horsemen in the zombie horde, but he serves an even greater darkness. After some convincing, Ross decides to meet up with Chloe at the Inquisition's main base in Fall Arbor Town, but not before the monks grant Ross passage to their sacred temple, yada yada, Baltoy Volves, they give me a Vespa, no, literally a Vespa, it makes perfect sense, it's a Vespa, it's yellow, I love it! Now in Fall Arbor Town, Chloe directs Ross next door where Alicia is waiting, and real quick, this part of the game was kinda hilarious to me, not because of any clever jokes or anything, but just because all these guys who look exactly the same are walking around, operating the Pokemon Center, and playing house together. It got a few laughs out of me, I'll give it that. Anyway, Alicia has decided to finally cut all ties with the Horsemen and lay it all out for us. She and Ross were both once Death Callers, partners in fact, and worked for Lord Gravitrick. Sometime before the game's events, the 4 Horsemen overthrew Lord Gravitrick. So Alicia, Ross, and Gravitrick fought the Horsemen back in Little Root Town, and the whole amnesia thing is due to a collapsing house bonking our poor boy on the noodle. As for King Meteor, he had a contract with the Death Callers to fight alongside them because they captured his daughter, and she's in there because she tried to escape the underworld, which apparently is a big no-no. So now we're off to take down the Horsemen at their main base of operations. After battling his way up to Famine and Pestilence and Alicia, something spectacular is revealed to Ross. So, turns out, there was never anyone named Alicia. The whole character was just War, one of the 4 horsemen in disguise. They've been playing our poor hero from the start. All of the flashbacks, they were planted by the horsemen. Oh, but Meteor's daughter is actually locked up because dragons are far too powerful to leave unchecked. Go figure. So after a grueling battle with War, Death suddenly appears and scolds the horsemen, sending them all back to the underworld in one fell swoop. Death explains that he is a completely impartial party and will come to all in the end.
See you, bitch.
Somehow, by the grace of God and a little plot convenience, Ross finds himself in Usher's submarine from Slateport Town. The seaman informs Ross of the Horsemen's Weather Institute turned maximum security vault. Ross asks if he could drop him off close to it, and Usher agrees, but only after he goes down and fixes the sub's service elevator. This is the first in a series of ridiculously cryptic puzzles that Cutlerine put in the game. I assumed I needed to find a turbine like I did for the ship's engine, but apparently what you actually need to do was catch a Magnemite, put it in your party, walk over to the elevator, and it would decide to use Thundershock on the elevator, which has always been strictly for battle, but now has overworld purposes? Also ignoring the fact that my Raichu knew Thunderbolt the whole time! Directly after this is the same kind of shit, mind you. There's this warp pad on the floor that claims to be locked, so in order to use it, I had to go back to a room and catch a Ditto so it could transform into a key for the pad on the floor, because all of those things just make so much sense when you put them in a sentence. We say goodbye to Usher forever and continue on Ross's journey. After battling through the maximum security prison, Gleese is waiting at the top. After another defeat, he hands over Meteor's daughter. Turns out, she's still just an egg. A telepathic egg, but an egg nonetheless that needs to be returned to her father. Down the cliffside, Ross battles his way through the Deadly Six again when the secret egg evolves into... Hyper Egg. Yep. Well, full transparency, this egg is actually one of the things that Jake had told me about before I had started this journey. It's actually an incredibly strong Pokemon that starts off as Mystery Egg, then evolves into Secret Egg, then Hyper Egg, and now it can be evolved into a variety of legendaries based on what evolution stone you present it with. Entei, Suicune, Raikou, Unknown, and Celebi. I'm sure we can all guess which one I'm gunning for. On an unrelated note, look what I got in Pokemon Go the other day. A bit further down, we run into this scientist, Dr. Blackthorn. He reveals that Meteor is in Moss Deep City, then mysteriously reassures Ross that he's a concerned party, and will reveal more when the time comes. After getting a feel of Ross's immediate distrust, Blackthorn states that there are fewer than 20 honest people left in the region, and we are among them, so take care. He's pretty cryptic, all things considered, but he seems to be genuine. Now, this part of the game is pretty dumb in hindsight, so here's the gist. We start running into Denju monsters from the Keitai Denju Telefang series of JRPGs about catching monsters and summoning them with phones or something like that. It's kinda cool that this stuff is here, but also completely ridiculous and unnecessary. Eventually, Ross bumps into this dude, Timulance, who is the source of the Telefang invasion and an associate of Gleese. After a quick battle, he remarks that Ross is just as strong as the Master said. Fortree City then sidelines us into a pointless side quest involving a violent sentient camera on a film set? It's so random. We beat the gym and see a zombie Lugia. Wow, that's so cool. Back to the story, please. After a painful encounter with every Deadly Seven member back to back, we make it to Lily Cove City, where Chloe and her goons are chilling in a house. Now that the horsemen are out of the picture, Ross no longer has any use, but just before he's done away with, Meteor and his Draco burst in and stop the execution. With Chloe dealt with, they take the confused hero back to their newly built town. Meteor is waiting with Dr. Blackthorn to thank the boy for all he's done. The psychic daughter egg is returned, and after some training, Meteor grants Ross this Knight's Crest or whatever for being a cool dude. One plot convenient phone call from Birch later, and we're back in Lily Cove to confront Gleese and Timulance. There was also mention that Landon Swampert was seen fighting here, but that goes nowhere, so don't think about it. The two troublemaking Tautists are making their way to the top of this tower along with the Dark Lord. Both Ross and the Deadly Seven battle their way up to the top as fast as possible. Our hero makes it to the top, but not soon after, Asimov is wiped from existence by Senex, or as you know him, the Dark Lord. And he's beaten pretty easily just after that, so the three of them just kinda leave. While discussing the events that just transpired, Ross learns that the Deadly Six apparently serve, and I couldn't make this up if I tried, the Order of the Afro, an ancient guild dedicated to combat of necromancy using the fighting art Hajiki, the martial art of attacking with lunacy. They inform our poor hero that Senex has made his lair in the south of the region, near Pseudopolis. They led Landon there, but now they think he's dead, so that's cool. In order to better prepare himself for this challenge, they recommend Ross train by taking on the Elite Four. And folks, this is where I broke. The Elite Four in Snakewood is notoriously difficult. Like, the first member has upper level 50s and the champion has lower level 70s. Meanwhile, my team was just rounding the bend of the 50s, so I did what any reasonable person would do. I cheated. Look, I had done multi-level grinding sessions for this game legitimately, well, with the speed up feature, but I still did it by hand, so I cut myself a much needed break. I also deserve my Celebi, damn it, but that was actually my fault. I missed the Leaf Stone a while back, oops. Plus, my Nuzleaf kinda started to suck in every battle he was put in, so I traded him out for a zombiemon. Gotta have some representation after all. Alright, there we go, I beat the game, yay!
Are you out of your damn mind?
After defeating the Time Wasters, I mean Elite Four, ring ring ring, we get a plot phone call from the professor. A suspicious tunnel has opened up near Lily Cove, but Gleese and Timulance rigged it with a trap. Gleese outmatches and sends our boy to the necropolis, and after being beaten by a regular-ass zombie who is clearly stronger than anyone else he's faced, including Senex, Ross wakes up in Pacific Town in front of Dr. Blackthorn. He tells the hero that to face this challenge, he'll have to train, but not his Pokemon, his own body. And to do that, he must seek Isu, this town's gym leader. And after another stupid roundabout side quest, Ross brings him some stew, satisfying Isu enough to train the boy. But during the training session, Ross accidentally kills the Wise Master by referencing the thing that Isu was a reference to. And I'm starting to get a headache now, so let's move this along for the love of God. Another plot call later, because Cutlerine really doesn't know how to naturally move stories along, we're meeting Dr. Blackthorn at the gravesite of Rayquaza, where we have one last battle with each member of the Deadly Seven as a tribute to Asimov. Blackthorn gives Ross his old Toxicroak that hasn't been mentioned up until now, he prays over a rock, and they're warped to Pseudopolis, where the Resistance has set up camp, which also happens to be made up of a lot of the chuckle from the last 70-something hours. They hatch a plan to basically rush in and blow the necropolis up and kill Senex, they say go team, and begin the final assault. While down there, Ross just so happens to rescue Landon and May, and it's a very underwhelming moment. There's a joke about how Cutlerine has run out of sprites at this point, and that's why they look so bland, but whatever. I honestly don't know what I expected. This area is really unforgiving though. If you happen to white out, it's this long journey all the way back through everything up until you jumped it. What? Why can't I see anything? That's weird. I guess I'll just restart my game. No. No, this can't be happening. After 80-something hours of game time and I'm on the final mission, I find myself in a bug with a dead game because I lost to one of the stupid enemies? Guys, I searched and searched for a way to fix this, but there straight up isn't one. This is just a bug in Snakewood. If you have to re-enter the necropolis for any reason, this room doesn't properly load and you're totally stuck. And if you saved in this room like I did because you thought it was another one of the stupid puzzles, then you're completely out of luck. I wanted to stop. I almost called it quits right here, but I already had come so far. If it hadn't been for the fact that I cheated and used a save state before Victory Road, this would have been as far as I went. So at this point, I just boosted my levels even higher than before and took another 2 hours or so to make it back to the exact spot I lost, fully prepared to not lose again. There are even more obnoxious puzzles and quizzes to deal with, but this has gone on long enough as is, and I think we're both getting tired here. After Ross makes it to the top of the necropolis, Gleese, Timulance, and Senex are waiting. After a quick battle, Senex's Pokemon are overpowered, but just as he's about to wipe Ross from existence, Asimov comes back from the dead just in the nick of time. He does away with Gleese and Timulance, but the Dark Lord gains the upper hand when he starts to bake a cake. Don't think about it. He finishes the dessert and with it destroys Hoenn entirely. Only Asimov, Ross, and Senex remain. As Ross and Asimov discuss what just happened, they discover that our little man has learned how to tap into Cutlerine's pop culture nexus. The young hero approaches the powerful Dark Lord and starts to reference things one after another. It ultimately proves to be too much for the Dark Lord, and Senex is defeated for good. And yeah, that's it. Ross sets the Hoenn region back to the way it was with more references and returns to the Resistance. They congratulate him and tell him that the Deadly Seven are holding a party at Gem Island. He accepts the offer but has one last thing to take care of. Back at the museum in Lily Cove, Ross enters the museum only to be greeted by a god of death, the ones that the monks from the monastery worship. But just as he's about to be killed, Landon calls out to him, saying that he and May are getting ready to ascend to a higher plane of existence, only to then be contacted by Meteor's daughter, who tells him that she has the resolution of the quest line for his past, and it's that there is no backstory. There was never anything to know. You should be happy living the life you have.
You're ugly, you're disgusting, I'm gonna kill you, give me $200.
The game then starts arguing with itself. Ross is about to give up, but then you, the player, starts talking to him. Then Cutlerine starts talking about himself, telling the character how much he loves this because of how stupid it is, and also that he's a genius. He mentions it twice, and that's the journey of Pokémon Snakewood. Okay, now before we discuss how stupid the plot itself is and how much sense it doesn't make, I want to bring to your attention a Reddit AMA thread by Cutlerine themselves. 7 years ago, they had this to say regarding the obviously critical reception of Snakewood. It seems to inspire hate and love in equal measure. I wasn't very good at hacking when I made it, so it's full of bugs and is very poorly designed. I think people like it despite the bugs and the design flaws because it's completely nonsensical. It doesn't really have a story, it has a succession of weird things that happen, and it makes less and less sense the longer it goes on. The fact that there are zombies isn't really important, neither is anything else for that matter. I don't think I'm really allowed to have a public opinion on whether it's any good or not. I just made the thing, and I'll let other people decide its merits. From the looks of this post and many others on this page, Cutlerine doesn't think very highly of their previous work either. They would even go on to mention that around the end of the Four Horsemen plotline, they decided that they wanted to continue making the game, so crudely chopping the game in 2 parts was chosen, getting rid of the stuff about the protagonist's past, rewriting the flashbacks into fake memories, branding Alicia as an imposter, all to split the game down the middle essentially. They also confessed to being tempted to completely start over around this point because they'd just gotten better at everything. This is the main nugget of information I want you to keep in mind as we prepare to go back through. And as I explain the maddening flaws, bugs, balancing issues, and just general lack of decent design principles, Cutlerine is fully aware of these mistakes and would likely agree that they're unacceptable. Not that this makes criticism null and void or anything, but it just seems like any of these comments would be met with,
I know, I got it. I got the concept.
And what better place to begin than with the team of monsters that got me through this nightmare? Well, okay, I say team, but let's be real, these two were the ones who did most of the heavy lifting. The mystery egg Pokemon was pretty cool, but only because of how powerful it ends up being if you stick with it. It's one of those secrets that goes far beyond cryptic, something that you'd have no hope of figuring out on a casual playthrough had it not been for outside assistance. The stat increases it gets from each evolution turns it into not only the largest health pool on my team, but also the best at everything else. And you all know how much I love Celebi, so this was definitely worth it after getting to the final step of the process. But also, apparently, using a moonstone will get you an unknown that is disgustingly good. Claydol wasn't terrible all things considered. He'd probably take 3rd place if I had to rank them. His Psybeam could be really useful around the right enemies, but that's when he wasn't getting one-shotted. Same goes for Aerodactyl. Yeah, the shiny Aerodactyl became my dedicated flying type with no flying type moves to learn. He wasn't very useful, and then there's Nuzleaf. I had the full intent of getting a Shiftry when I caught the Seedot, but I remembered that required a Leaf Stone after I had already used it on the Hyper Egg. And after boosting him to about level 60 something, I kept thinking to myself, something feels off here. He was alright early in the adventure, but became a liability the further we went. Thus, I went and recruited a zombie Meryl, and I don't remember the actual dumb zombie name it was given, but I'm sure it was something special. She was alright, but not the best, honestly, and then I used that Toxicroak once or twice before the game ended. But the only one to come close to rivaling Celebi was my second in command, that Pikachu that I encountered by pure chance at the beginning of the game. Its special attack stat was one of its best, so it could deal some heavy punishment with Thunderbolt, so evolving it into a Raichu and learning Ice Punch made it almost unstoppable. The amount of variety that just Celebi and Raichu had covered was perfect for this game. We were a little lacking on the fire and water type coverage, but we managed just fine. I swear I probably could have made it through with just Celebi and Raichu. That is, unless we ran into one of the many custom Pokemon Cutlerine designed for this game. No, I'm not talking about the zombie Pokemon. It was cute seeing some of them and their ridiculous sprites in the first half, like poor Houndour, I mean Houndsour or Gorlax or Bulbasaur. No, none of these were any real trouble. I'm talking about the likes of Kinchuko and its Shadow Swipe move. These were all disgustingly strong. It always took Celebi and Raichu to take one of these things down. Because Kinchuko's speed was so crazy, if they survived the initial attack, Raichu's Thunderbolt or Celebi's Eruption would be the only option to deal damage worth a damn. I told you about the murderous sentient camera side quest, but I actually ended up catching it, and it was a pretty solid steel and electric type. It really came in handy when I fought the zombie Lugia. And then there's King Medio. The champion is the only one that I encountered, but that's for a good reason. King Medio is a dark ghost type. It also has the ability Wonder Guard. For those who are unaware, Wonder Guard is an ability that prevents the Pokemon from taking damage from any attack that isn't super effective against it. To my knowledge, Shed Ninja is the only Pokemon to date that can have it naturally. Now, in Snakewood, the champion's King Medio knows only 2 moves, Toxic and Splash. This means that if you don't have the move Beat Up or some sort of status effect dealing move, you're not going to beat King Medio. Or you can do what I did and use your surplus of Pecha Berries to heal the Toxic, along with healing moves to keep you alive, while draining all 4 of your moves' PP so you can use Struggle to eventually take it out. And this is the kind of battle that Cutlerine must have thought themselves so intelligent to set up, because this game is full of them. Just about every battle, and I mean every battle, has the same privilege as the boss fights from the main Pokemon games. They can heal their Pokemon with items if their health gets below a certain point. This makes sense for important fights such as gym leaders and the like. They're more skilled than the average trainer on the side of the route. They won't go down so easily, but I think literally every trainer has healing items to use in this game. I'm not exaggerating. If you don't take the enemy Pokemon out while at half health or full health, then that fight basically just restarted. This means that you have to be careful not to do too little damage to the opponent so as to not knock their health down into that sweet spot that will cause the trainer to pop a healing item. This alone makes the fights last so much longer than they normally would. But on top of this, Cutlerine has equipped so many of these trainer Pokemon with stat-altering moves to make the fights drag even more so. I know that official games are more decent with this stuff, but this is exactly the kind of shit that makes me disinterested in turn-based combat. Like I said, it's just Cutlerine twirling his mustache, but coming to a near stalemate because of combos like Double Team, Substitute, Protect, and Leech Life from just another trainer battle was... ugh. And that's when I was even meant to be able to win the battles naturally at all, because there are plenty of occasions where you can run into Pokemon and trainers you just have no hope of winning against. The Jailer in the Necropolis, the Gym in Petalburg, it's terrifying, and some of these are in the middle of long dungeons like Shaderoo, and if you didn't save before making that easily made mistake, that's a really fun walk back to wherever you came from. If I hadn't had the speed up feature mapped to the right trigger on my controller, I would have marked this project up as a lost cause much earlier on. Because there's so much that just feels like bullying for the sake of being able to do so. There's the basic stuff like putting doors that take you back to the beginning of dungeons, or crates that look exactly like crates you've been able to interact with the whole game that suddenly, you guessed it, take you back to the beginning of the dungeon. But there's also Cutlerine's favorite kind of puzzle, the trial and error kind. After encountering the Deadly Seven for the first time, you have to participate in this challenge in a wide open room. The thing is, there's only one acceptable path, and if you take one incorrect step, then you're sent back to the beginning of the room. To re-emphasize, this room is not small. It's 2 large areas with several trainer battles and plenty of opportunities for mistakes and wasted time. Then, during the raid of the Necropolis at the end of the game, there's an invisible maze. There is no visible indication on which way is the correct way, and there are also multiple incorrect long paths to take. It was so bad, in fact, that Cutlerine eventually just posted a map of the correct route through the maze, and that's after all the other cryptic stuff like the Magnemite and Ditto puzzles, so you know it had to be bad. And can I just say, I rolled my eyes so many times throughout this playthrough. All of this try-hard edgelord stuff gave me a laugh the first few times, but then it just kept going and going. Like the oddly specific descriptions of corpses in the overworld, the entirety of the concert sequence at the very end of the game was absolutely dumbfounding. I mean, to be fair, Cutlerine probably cringes when they look back on this too, but... That would be checkmate, my good man.
No, it isn't.
Yes it is.
Is it checkmate now?
Okay, that's not checkmate. Damn, I sounded awesomely cryptic there. Now, let's go. This girl's eyes glow a soft silver. She murmurs unintelligible nothings under her breath. The words are red and shudder angrily in her mouth. And there were a few occasions where the game claims that I had been lasered by giant sharks with laser eyes, and then tells me to leave or that it was just kidding. It's after commenting on instances like this where I really don't know what else I can say about this game. I could tell you that there's something of a post-game on Gym Island where you can battle difficult trainers for rewards, but I don't want to do that. The most notable thing about Gym Island is that when you reach the end of its challenges, you can find Senex in a house as a wild encounter and capture him, adding the Dark Lord to your party if you so choose. That's funny, I'll give it that. I can mention a slight positive, like how I think the middle portion of the game is paced the best overall. It flows far smoother than the rest of the adventure with how on point the enemies are level-wise, and nothing stupidly cryptic makes you want to slam your head through a wall. And then there's Petalburg Gym, that kicked my ass that one time I accidentally ran off the rails in the campaign. I went back to it after I power leveled everyone, but it was disappointing. You fight through trainer after trainer until you reach the protagonist's father as a zombie. They have a really weird interaction where the zombie starts emotionally tormenting the kid and comparing him to his far more successful older brother, but after he's defeated, Ross reassures himself that it's all okay, like a self-reflection journey reached its peak. But none of that really means you should even think about playing Snakewood for a second. I think the main reason I kept pushing on is similar to why you can't turn away from a video of a car accident in progress, or sit through an entire cringe video. It's the hand over the open mouth going, oh my god, how much worse can this get? How much more deranged can this person's mind get? What other stupid thing will make me slap my forehead next? Cutlerine said in that Reddit thread that if he had the opportunity to do it all over again, the only thing they would fix is the amount of bugs. They claim that Snakewood is the buggiest game they've ever made, and I definitely believe it with how many I ran into, but that statement also implies that they would leave the narrative alone. They make specific mention to how rushed and bullheaded the development was. I wouldn't have minded making something so weird and crazy if it had only been less buggy and less badly designed. You know, I had half a mind to go and buy one of these little reproduction carts with the cute case to put on my shelf as a sort of reminder that I made it through what is considered to be one of the worst Pokemon ROM hacks ever made. But I never did. Mainly because that's $30 for something I'll never touch again, but mostly because I don't think Cutlerine would want any of us to pay any amount of money for this game. I mean, it was their most amazing mistake. They likely wouldn't take it back if they could, but I also couldn't see them condoning anyone paying money for such an inconsistent product. And I respect the ever-loving hell out of that. I have so many videos from even last season that make me shudder if I go back to them. But it's because those videos exist that I remember to avoid making those mistakes again. And I know I'm not alone. You, the person watching this video, have some old project that you look back on and go, wow, never doing that again. I've got to promise myself to be better next time. And I'm almost positive that's what Pokemon Snakewood is to the Pokemon ROM hacking community. A strong reminder to never do that again. That might seem a bit demeaning, but I think it's ultimately important because it can help anyone who experiences it to learn those lessons too. Cutlerine might not have made the most incredible Pokemon game ever, but they sure did make something that was and will be remembered for years to come. But anyway, I appreciate you for watching, so thanks for stopping by, and have a spooky night.